Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Rebekkah, and welcome to Beyond Thunderdome.
Regenerative thinking for libraries. I'm Matt Bollerman.
So the last time Matt and I presented at NYLA on a topic similar to this was about 5 conferences ago, if you measure time in NYLA conferences. Back in 2015, we did a presentation on sustainable thinking. And that was around the time we had gotten the sustainability initiative off the ground, and we're working with a number of NYLA members to create something new, something people hadn't seen before, to help empower people to be, in the library world at least, to be leaders in the topic of sustainability. And since 2015, we've been a little busy. We launched the Sustainable Library Certification Program, the first program of its kind for public libraries, academic libraries, and school librarians, all using the power, blood, sweat, and tears of NYLA members to figure out how to help libraries methodically figure that out. They formed the Sustainable Thinking and Action Roundtable. The American Library Association adopted sustainability as a core value. Accreditation standards for library schools have been updated to include sustainability as something that you have to teach in order to be accredited. There's columns in Library Journal and American Libraries devoted to sustainability. We actually won an international award from the International Federation of Library Associations for the certification program, the first U.S. organization to win the Green Libraries Award from IFLA. And we've got about, I think, 2 or 3 dozen libraries now enrolled in the certification program, with more on the way. And 4 have been certified, which we're going to talk about a little later today. And just last month, we hosted the first international conference on sustainability in libraries with 5,400 people registered from 20 different countries. So we think we might be onto something here. And given that was all happened just in the past 5 years. And we thought we'd come back to conference this year and talk a bit about how thinking is evolving in this area, and some new thinking that we're doing, at least, about what it might look like in the future, and where we find ourselves today as a society kind of can lend itself to understanding why we picked the Thunderdome reference. And for all you youngins on the line, Beyond Thunderdome was the second in the Mad Max series, which is from 1985, a post-apocalyptic dystopian film that is definitely worth a watch, particularly on a very late Friday night. But you're looking there at anti-entity and Mad Max escaping Bartertown there. And I think a lot of us are feeling the weight this week of what the chaos of our world has been for 2020. And I don't think we need to belabor the fact that it's been a rough year. You've heard that at probably every session you've been to. But the thing that I think that's been going on in the background that's still pretty unnerving for everyone is the environmental effects of climate change, and what we're seeing continue to happen on top of the public health crisis, the financial crisis, and the political crisis we find ourselves in. So it's been a hell of a year, just to put a cap on that particular talking point. But it is important to note that scientists are saying that the damage that we're seeing, and the severity of storms that we're seeing, and the severity of natural disasters caused by climate change, from the fires out west to record heat points and Death Valley there, 130 degrees was reached this year, frequency and severity of hurricanes, a massive windstorm in the center of our country. Scientists have very helpfully been saying this is the best it's going to get for a number of decades. And that's hard to stomach, to think about how rough things are and how compounded things are right now by choices humans continue to make on the environmental, economic, and social fronts, to say nothing of the current political circus that we're watching unfold in our country. So Matt and I talk a lot about, what if there was a different way forward? What if we stopped doing the things we keep doing over and over again and expecting different results? And what if we forged a new path and put respect and empathy for humans at the center of everything we do, and brought our world a little more into balance than it is to now? Because just a little bit more balance would go a very long way on a lot of fronts that we're all pretty concerned about right now. And as we said 5 years ago, we still completely believe that libraries can help lead the way, and that we can be proactive in the work and the choices that we make, and how we do our work, and what we choose to do, and how we invest our time and energy on things. And we think, once again, that New York libraries can help lead the way, specifically as we move forward into thinking about how we get to a healthier place on all of these fronts that are very worrisome to us here today.
So the term regenerative, there's a definition on the screen: the process that restore, renew, or revitalize their own sources of energy and materials, is part of kind of concepts that we were working through 5 years ago. And this concept of regenerative was kind of the top of it. And so when you have the idea of sustainable resilience and then this idea of regenerative, well, for me, that word and that concept of what it means came from work that I did while I was at the Hauppauge Public Library. The library undertook a design process and a public community process to think about new space for the library. We were going to be placed into a public park, and we wanted the community to come by to help us talk about what the purpose of this new space was going to be. In addition to that, we wanted the public to help do the goal setting for that purpose, and then finally to have a hand in the design of that space, to have some initial design input into the space. So we hired some folks to help us coordinate that. We used the meetings were called charrettes, which is, for those not familiar, it's a form of gathering that has a work product at the end of it. So it's not just you're coming almost like this, you're hearing information, but we're not asking you to produce anything. When you come to a charrette, the expectation is that you produce something out of it, that there's work done in a group setting. And so we hired John Becker, who's an architect and a consultant, and does this work, does this kind of this charretting, I guess, and facilitating as a member of the 7 group. And he helped bring these folks together to do those things. And he led those different charrettes. And during those conversations, the idea of that the library could be so much more than it just was just a building and people came and got services, but the building itself could add to the community in a way, in its doing that general task, was able to kind of expand out and do more and be an example, and that it could reach out and really change people's understanding of what a built space could do, of what a library building could do. And it was really a fascinating thing for us to realize that there was an opportunity for us to have a chance to express this to the community. And we really started to see it as a strategic thing, that we saw an opportunity that the library service and programs that we designed for the future would actually be able to add new and energetic life into the things that we did, that we were always a positive into the community, as opposed to just keeping things normal or being able to bounce back from disruption. So one example that we have in the real life is the Eco Machine. And for those of you who may or may not be familiar with this location, it's in Rhinebeck, New York. Is that right, Rebekkah? Did I get that right?
It is, yep.
All right, whew, Rhinebeck. I all of a sudden I thought it's Rhinecliff, Matt. No, it's Rhinebeck. And this is at the Omega Institute. And literally, the Omega Institute is a former kind of summer camp. It's the location is at a former summer camp, and it's on a big hill that comes down to a creek. And they probably have somewhere along the lines of, they have big retreats there and workshops there, and people come and stay. So it might be maybe 100 rooms that people stay at. And they realized that they had a bit of an issue with their effluent, with the waste that was being produced by the folks coming and visiting the Omega Institute. It was literally going downhill and into the river. And they felt that their mission, which was to kind of show that there's a lot of respect for the earth and that we should be a partner with it and respect for each other, and the Omega Institute was developed in order to have those ideals at the core of itself, that they weren't necessarily treating the river the right way. So they decided to build a system that would reclaim that water. And it was also from sinks, it was from dishwashing, it was from all the different gray and black water that was being produced into this system that naturally cleaned it, and the water that came out the other side was, I think, one basically grade away from being potable. So you could almost drink the water that came out of this process. So instead of burying this waste, instead of trying to do something with it, they decided to make an example of it. And not only did they make this a huge kind of room that you can see and you can walk through and you can visit it, which seems bizarre that that's the thing you'd want to visit, is the where all the gray and black water gets processed. But it's an incredible machine. They use the Living Building Challenge, which is a certification program for built space, similar to the LEED process from the U.S. Green Building Council, which is the Leadership in Environmental and Energy Design program, which maybe you've heard of, like a project being called LEED Silver or LEED Gold or LEED Certified. Living Building Challenge is a much larger process that is a little bit bigger and grander and definitely more regenerative in scope than, I would say, LEED's kind of focus, which tends to be more sustainable. And the things that this building does is it gives back energy to the community into its world than it takes. So it actually generates over the energy that it needs. The materials that were used to build it were things that don't harm the earth, that they're renewable resources. They're not things that can't be replaced. So all the different things that go into the making of this building allow it to be something that's a positive and an add-on to, as opposed to just keeping things neutral.
I think that's the real message here of these examples we have for you, of something that goes above and beyond what it needs to do just to survive. And so when we think about other processes and examples in our world of organizations or systems that are designed to give back more than they take, there's another great example right here in New York State, believe it or not, Grayston Bakery, which provides the brownies that you get in the chocolate fudge brownie ice cream from Ben & Jerry's, which of course is Vermont's finest. But here in New York, Grayston's Bakery is something that you may or may not heard of. It's down in Yonkers. And they're very cool. They're called a social enterprise. And they were actually the first benefit corporation formed in New York State. And maybe you've heard about this, maybe you haven't. But their whole model is based on the idea, I almost said baked into the idea. It's based on the idea of linked prosperity, that the earth, people, animals, and the community should prosper from the effort of business. And so their business, their motto is actually that they don't hire people to bake brownies, they bake brownies to hire people. 100% of their profits are invested back into the local community. They've hired over 2,000 people that otherwise never would have gotten a job. And that's one of the other really key things about their organization and the way they do business, is that they will hire anyone who wants a job. If they want to work, regardless of their educational background, work history, past social barriers, maybe they're incarcerated, maybe they've been homeless, maybe they've been addicted to some substance in the past. There's no background checks, no pre-screening. When a position becomes available, the next person on the waiting list gets the job, no questions asked. And people who are given that trust and given that second chance, perhaps, in their lives, really delve in and appreciate that and have a chance to do something different on their path forward in their life. So not only are 100% of the profits from this organization, really a company, is invested back into the community, they've also used some of their profits to build housing for working families. They use volunteer time out of their paid staff to go out and help with community gardens and cleanup projects, and to really help people who live in the community feel a sense of ownership of it. It's a very holistic approach to thinking about what business really could look like if we all actually put people at the center of what we do and not the bottom line.
So that brings us to one of the first models that I think helps understand what it means to be regenerative. And this is the pentad, which was developed in our research that we found out was from Carol Sanford. And I believe it's in her book, The Responsible Business. Is that right, Rebekkah? Am I getting that right?
I think you're right about that.
Good, cool. I'm glad. All right, good. So Carol Sanford and I think her group, Regenesis, developed this structure as a way to, like I said, to show what we're up to. And if we think it through, essentially the idea here is that the 5 points of the pentad all are in balance. They all have relationships with each other. And if any one of them is dominating, then the whole thing kind of falls apart, right? And so we'll go around the horn so we're all good. We have the customer, co-creators, the earth, the community, and investors. And those are the 5 parts of this pentad. Now, often when we talk about this system, the person that's not at the table, like let's say you were going to have a meeting with all the folks at this, on this pentad, there's one party that typically doesn't have a place at the table, and that's the earth. And that to me is one of those places that we'll emphasize here where the library can have a role in being that person, in being that voice, because it's in our missions actually to do that. But let's take the bakery example that Rebekkah just shared, the Grayson Bakery, about how they fit into this. So the customer is Ben & Jerry's, we'll say, in this example. The co-creators are all the folks that work at the bakery. The earth are the resources that the bakery needs to fulfill its mission of baking brownies. The community is the area that this bakery is in, which is Yonkers. And then the investors, in this case, could be kind of the customers. It's also, there's a not-for-profit that supports that bakery. And so those relationships are all there, and they're in balance. The customers are buying the materials, they're going back there, and everyone here is treated in an equal way. If we think of the library, we might want to change some of those words. You know, in your library, you might call your customer a patron. At Hauppauge, we call them guests at the Hauppauge Public Library where I work. Our co-creators would be our staff, our volunteers, those who are the public face of the library, or people consider them. The earth, still the earth, no name change there. The community is just that, which is a little bit different than the guests and patrons because there are folks that don't use you. And then the investor, interestingly enough, here in the library example, to me, would be the taxpayer. For most of our communities, we're sponsored and supported by taxes. If you were, and that's in a public library setting, if you're probably, you're still in a school setting, you're a taxpayer. In the, I guess in an academic setting, it could be grantors, it could be those paying the tuition. There could be other folks that make up that investor group for yours. So the idea here is when you're thinking through making decisions, trying to get things done, trying to think about how your service is affecting folks, these 5 areas need to be in balance for those decision makings in order to get to be regenerative in your operations and in your running of your library.
So that word balance was really key when we used this construct when we did our first retreat of people in NYLA who were interested in the topic of sustainability. And we talked about this model and everyone started to really buy in and understand what we were trying to say about the balance and the need to think about all 5, basically, of these audiences to keep them in balance in order to make the best possible decisions on behalf of our institutions, those we serve, and the world at large. And so that led us to adopt the triple bottom line definition of sustainability. And one of the things we learned, I think the hard way in this work, was that the definition and the words we use really, really matter. And we were using the word sustainability all over the place in all different ways. And we finally had to agree on a common definition of sustainability, which actually was the same definition that's been adopted by the American Library Association when they added sustainability as a core value to the list of our core values of our profession. So let's just stop a minute and consider the weight of that on the list of core values of our profession, right next to guaranteed access to information, intellectual freedom, democracy, social responsibility is now sustainability. That should be something at the core of our decision making as library professionals, to think about the balance. And that can be decision makings at all levels of your organization, from not only how you build a building, but how you treat your staff, what you buy for summer reading program, what you will buy to put in your collection. All of these things have multiple threads tied to them that are tied to production chains, natural resources, workers' rights, are people being treated equitably, fairly in our economy, all sorts of implications when we make financial and policy decisions in our organizations. So this idea of using the triple bottom line is something that is threaded throughout all of the work that we're doing through the New York Library Association Sustainability Initiative, and provides a solid platform for libraries to think about how to approach such a massively challenging time in our history. Every time you turn a corner, you find a new thing that needs attention and work, and there's a big problem, and people need to come together and work on it. And people just feel so overwhelmed. There's just too much. They don't even know where to start. And that was the problem we've discovered at the beginning of the work that we were doing, that we needed to boil things back down to the beginning and start back from scratch and think about how we build the building blocks, the foundational decisions we make about our organizations to start off right and be authentic in our work, to truly be sustainability leaders in our communities. And those are the resources and tools you saw come out of that first iteration of the Sustainability Initiative. You see the roadmap to sustainability, which you could literally download right now on your smartphone. It's a mobile app, or you could ask for a PDF copy or get a cute little booklet you can hold in your hand and write in. But getting people to start thinking about the basics of the decisions and planning decisions they're making as they relate to this idea of balance in the universe, of how we make sure we're respecting all sides of that pen tab and balancing the triple bottom line of sustainability. And that was also the thinking behind the design of the Sustainable Library Certification Program, that there are thousands of things you could do to try to be more sustainable and be a leader on the topic. But how do you do so methodically? Where do you focus your time and energy in the places that will make the biggest difference for not only your organization as an institution, but for your library workers, for your patrons, for the community at large, and the global community? All of us are tied together. I think nothing was brought home more cleanly to me this year than the fact that the virus, COVID, right, has no idea about state boundaries. As much as our governor has done a admirable job of trying to use state boundaries as a way to mitigate risk, the fact is the virus could care less, right? So all of those man-made constructs of governance and lines and boundaries and walls, these are all artificial constructs that don't speak to the true health of nature and of humans. So where do you put your energy? That's what we tried to do through the certification program. There's versions for public library, academic libraries, and school librarians. So we truly were trying to speak to every type of library professional in NYLA. We've got people knocking on the door outside of New York trying to get into this program right now. And part of that, I think, is the recognition that we're all looking for a way forward. And we all might have some ideas of how to do that, but we'll be much more effective if we work together and share knowledge. And that's what NYLA is so good at being a platform for, that no one of us has to figure this out. We can all come together, find communities of interest and practice to figure out these really big problems we're being faced with. And there's certainly going to be more on the horizon coming. But if we're good at working together, we can model that for our communities, because that's what our communities need to do. They have to figure out how to work together in civil and civic discord to figure out how to move forward and solve problems together. That is at the heart of how we will find sustainability and resilience in the coming years. So libraries that model that behavior from the inside out, we think are going to have more support in the future. They're going to be seen as leaders, and they're going to attract investment, financial investment, as well as goodwill investment into their organizations. But this is just the beginning, right? This is just getting our own house in order and trying to think through some of the basic decisions that we make to make sure that we're authentic when we're out in the community and trying to address issues of social equity or economic feasibility of our community or being truly stewards of the earth. This is literally just the starting spot.
Yeah, exactly. And this chart is trying to show you that. This is from another member of the 7 group, Bill Reed. And this is a way to kind of to show where efforts fall. So what Bill's trying to show here is to say, let's say that you have not engaged in greenness at all, sustainability, all that stuff you're to the left of this chart. You're conventionally running and doing stuff and trying to do things. You are leading us towards collapse. Not to put it on your exact shoulders, but essentially that's kind of where that is taking us. And so you might say, well, I'm greening my things, right? I've been trying to buy better products and I've been trying to do this other stuff. Well, great. You're slowing that down to just decline. All right. So you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's really not what my hope was. I was really trying to make ourselves sustainable. And we knew this when we started talking about this with the library community, is we needed to start somewhere. And we figured that to get these concepts across 5 years ago, to start with that you're not doing any harm, like you're not adding to harm, but you're not necessarily yet putting stuff back in the system in the way, but we're going to get to that. We are doing that in some ways. That action is sustainable, right? It's uncertain which way it's going to go because you're right there at the middle. You're not adding, you're not doing more good, you're not doing less bad stuff. Now, as we move to the right, this is kind of where our other words we've been talking about as the sustainability initiative has been, is the idea of resilience and then regenerative. So we're trying to do more good in our decision making from that sustainable, to get that sustainable foothold in. I've achieved the Sustainable Library Certification Program. I've built a LEED Gold building. I've done these things where I'm able to get to that point where I'm not doing further harm. I'm acting less bad. My decisions are neutral, if not slightly more good. That's where we're starting point we'd like people to be. And then to start to step out into an action of being, my actions are restorative. My actions are regenerative. And I'm leading us out of that idea of decline and collapse towards resilience, and then finally one of safety, which is great, right? That's where we want to be. We want to make sure that, you know, when my library undertook some of the the Libraries Transform action with the Harwood Institute, we did community conversations, essentially to a person, and we spoke to just about 100 people over 9 different conversations. Safety was probably the #1 issue on everyone's mind, regardless of age or background or the rest. People want that feeling of safety. They want their children to be safe. They want to feel safe. They want to feel that they belong. They want to feel that idea that they're part of something that's safe and welcoming. And what could be better than that for the library to be part of that? But that's kind of this idea, is that while we think we're doing things that are green or sustainable, in this idea of being regenerative, there's some work to do to be more good.
I think Matt's storytelling about using the Libraries Transform resources from the Harwood Institute, which are provided for free for you by the American Library Association, that's a program we've used at the Mid-Hudson Library System also. We've actually had 15 of our member libraries use that program and connect with their community in a new way. And I hope I'm not giving away the whole storyline here, but almost all of our libraries also found their community is seeking safety. They want to be able to trust their neighbors and feel like they're part of a community, and that their kids are safe going to school. These are very basic things that people want out of living in a community. So as Matt was mentioning, stepping outside of our organizations to think about this and talk to others about what this will look like locally where you are, at your library's community, your library school or institute of higher education. This is part of the thinking that has to go into understanding that it's not all about us. It's not just about libraries and the decisions that we make. We have to make those decisions in conjunction with others and thinking about others as we start to design the future library spaces, design library service programs and partnerships that will really help to support our community to feel more stable and more safe in the future. Now, I'm about to show you a slide that might make your eyes cross, but just hang in there with me and I'll promise to tell you a little more about it. So hopefully demystify it a little bit.
Is that the Death Star?
It is not the Death Star. I hope it's not the Death Star, but it might be if we don't pay attention. So this is a graphic from a book I'm fairly obsessed with right now because I'm pretty convinced, right? I drank the Kool-Aid. I understand about sustainability and resilience and the need that we're not quite going far enough, even as we have excellent intent to make better decisions on behalf of ourselves and those we care about. So what does it actually look like to facilitate what's called a just transition? How do you justly transition to an economy that truly serves all and puts humans at the center of decision making instead of money? So this economist, Kate Raworth, and maybe you've heard of her, she has a very famous TED Talk. So if you want the condensed version of this whole thing, you can watch the TED Talk, 14 minutes long, doesn't break the bank time-wise. The whole idea here is that we should be living inside what Kate calls the donut, and that's the green part that you see in the middle, that we should be living inside the ecological ceiling, therefore respecting the natural resources and the just natural limitations of Earth as a thing, and really then balance that with the human issues that come into play when you overlay human society with planet Earth. And it's a pretty simple construct when you really think about it like that we should live inside the donut. We should live inside our means when it comes to the environment. We should respect the natural resources that we have around us. And we should start respecting our peers and our neighbors and the other humans on this earth in a way that respects the way they live their life so that they feel honored and part of communities, and that we have equality across gender and ethnicity and all different types of identification that people have, that we have peace and justice, that people can make a living wage and live with human dignity, that they have access to education and healthcare and food and water, just very, very basic things. So her indication here is that we have a shortfall in a lot of the human aspects of our society, and we've overshot a lot of our environmental boundaries that are here. And I think this is a pretty accurate description of what we're seeing here. I think the red zones that were in her book would be a little more drastic than they probably were when she wrote the book a few years ago. But it certainly is a way to think differently and find that, like, it's such a huge topic, right? To bring everything into balance. And here's a chance to maybe think a little differently about things. So I urge you to write down that phrase I just used of just transition, a just transition, because that's the real work that needs to get done, not treading water so that we just keep our chin above the water and just keep doing things the way we are without killing ourselves a little more each day with the environmental and social decisions that we're making, but to truly change the nature of our economic structure, which might sound kind of radical, but is truly really what has to happen, and to definitely think differently about policy related to how people are allowed to live their lives, not only in our country, but worldwide, and putting human rights at the center of what we're doing here. Because I don't quite understand why else we're here and what we're doing in libraries if we're not putting humans at the center of what we're doing. So two great examples out there you might want to read up on that I think really exemplify what we're trying to talk about here today, which is libraries networking with others in the community at the very local grassroots level to start thinking more holistically about the future. Great example right here in New York State, which is the city of Kingston. And it's a great headline, right, from The Guardian, the US city preparing itself for the collapse of capitalism. And certainly they seemed a little weirder a few years ago than they do today. Now everyone's knocking on their door asking what they're doing differently to see if it might work where they live. But a great example of how they got started and got this, I think it's a movement now here in Kingston, that people started to think differently and work together differently, was really sparked by something called the O Plus Festival, which was truly a bartering event for artists and musicians to provide their services of making the world more beautiful and helping people understand the world through art and music, and bartering their skill set with doctors and dentists so they could get health care. And it's going back to those fundamental building blocks of what it takes to live in the world as a human, and understanding there has to be a different way, because the commodification of our world and the focus on capitalism to the extreme is leaving huge swaths of people behind, and they don't even have a fighting chance. And the only way they're going to get it is if local systems emerge and evolve that help support everyone. We can't wait for government to do it. Corporations aren't going to do it for us. We literally have to do it ourselves. And libraries should be part of that conversation and using their resources to the advantage of all in their community, and being that platform to produce these results, using information literacy to help people make better decisions. Great segue over to the Oberlin Project out in Ohio, where we've got an entire city who got together and said, what if we What if we made the decisions that aren't being made on the national and global level to be a carbon neutral city? We could model this for people, but we can't do it one agency by itself. We all have to pull together, from the government to education to grassroots organizations to neighbors helping neighbors. Let's figure out what it looks like if we just model the way and pull it all forward ourselves. So this is starting to emerge, and we should be having more and more of these examples crop up in the next few years. So if you want to learn more about this, read about Just Transition, read about transition towns, check out these two stories, because I think this is the kind of storyline we want libraries to be a part of. When you think about the path of your career, and I'd like you to imagine right now sitting in a chair 10 years from now in your office and then thinking to yourself, or cubicle or front desk, wherever you happen to find yourself, but looking back and thinking to yourself, what has my contribution in my profession been to the betterment of the community that I serve? All of you are motivated by wanting to make the world a better place. And I think we can really amp that up in the next few years by stepping into the space that really needs help right now, which is not necessarily a comfortable place to be. It's not a clear pathway right now that you know exactly what to do, but we should be there figuring it out with other people in our community, not just waiting for them to come up with a great idea and come to us. Let's be right out there, out front with them, helping to lead the way on these topics. So that's why we came up with this whole program today, was to start kind of pulling together all these awesome things, right, that are out there in the ether. We're hearing threads of this all over the place. So many great stories right here at this very conference over these 48 hours that NYLA has produced for us. We've got to focus. We've really got to focus, because we don't have enough resources to do everything equally well. We don't have the luxury of waiting for other people to figure things out anymore. I think the society has shown that we're having a lot of trouble working together right now. So when we start to put together a comprehensive kind of construct for libraries to think about in the future, we put together 6 points. We thought kind of pull it all together and perhaps provide that guiding light or compass setting that you will need to produce a library that really is responsive and reflective of the community that it serves in the future. The first thing being to achieve net positive impacts for the environment, economy, and social equity. We're not just talking about towing the line and making it quote unquote okay. We want it to be good. We want it to be better for people. We want to be generating energy, resources, and I think empowerment into the community that go above and beyond what we're seeing right now in the community. Can we be a catalyst and generator for that net positive impact on that triple bottom line that we used before?
Yeah, the next one is a service and program design that is flexible for the changing needs of the community. And while on the face of it, many of us maybe, especially recently, I would say around March 15th of 2020, can answer, heck yeah, we are super flexible for the changing needs of the community. Maybe last year at this conference, that would be a little harder question to have answered, or to think to myself, wow, that is something that I'm known for, or that's what my team is good at, is being flexible and keeping up with the changing needs of the community. I know that for Hauppauge, when COVID started, we did things faster. We did things, I think, with more impact. We did things that I never expected us to do, and came up with in a shorter amount of time. And I was so proud of my board and staff, the whole entire staff, who came together to try to understand how we could still be of service during those stay-at-home times, that order to work from home. And I think we provided really good service during that time to our community. But that didn't just come because we had to. We had been testing being more flexible, and being a little more flexible is really the best word, is being more able to change faster as we listen to our community in the years prior. So I think we were at a little bit of an advantage when COVID-19 hit, but that is really a big one for this, is are you doing more good? Really, that's the question you should be asking yourselves with each of these points.
The third one there is to deploy outcome-based evaluation. And this is something we're seeing that the Public Library Association has dragged us kicking and streaming to do outcome-based evaluation. This has been something my whole career, 20 odd years here in New York, we've been told to get better at, and libraries still aren't awesome at it, right? We still have work to do on this front, but it will be very important to be able to demonstrate what difference you have made. Not just how many people came through the door, or came to a program, or used the computers, or logged into the Wi-Fi. What did you actually do to change someone's life? Did someone's life get better because they came to that program? Is their kid doing better at school because they were participating in the early literacy program? Did they have a shot at making it through this school year thanks to help you gave them to overcome the digital divide issues that they might be confronting this year? So measuring the good that we do, you'll see if you're part of the Sustainable Library Certification Program, measurement's a big part of it, that you actually baseline and benchmark where you are so that as you make better and better decisions, you can look back and measure and say, you know what, we did use less energy because we made those choices. We did put less stuff in the waste stream because we made these choices. Our staff is happier because we made these choices. That measurement aspect, and I've got an example on the next slide to show you a couple of more outward facing outcome-based evaluation metrics you can use. But that storytelling aspect, as anyone who has ever come to hear me talk before knows, you have to be great at telling the story of the difference that your library makes and the value that you bring to the community.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Rebekkah, because I think that you can't say it enough. And that was something that Rebekkah Miller said this morning in her keynote, was that this is we really responded well for the most part. Libraries did across the nation to rising to this challenge of a pandemic. And it's a story that we can't say enough to those who want to listen to us. So anyone who's having a Zoom Thanksgiving like my family has just planned, they'll be bored to tears by the end of it because I'm going to tell them so many times. The fourth bullet, mindset of continual evolution and renewal. That really is a mindset, is you need to say to yourself, my institution cannot be stuck. Similar almost to the one about how your service and program design is going to change, comes from that your staff, your board is always thinking that there's something that can change. There's a way to pull this apart, that I can do more good in that evolution of that service. And then I'm constantly renewing that faith in that. Is that by I'm staying in touch with the community? Of course. Is it by making sure I'm communicating with all the parties and all the members of the Pen Tab? You have to be. It's just that you are part of it. You are part of the heart of everything in that community. I think the phrase from the bakery was that, is it we bake brownies so we can hire people? That's kind of what you're doing here, right? We're running the library so that we can make this community better. It's our mission. It's what we're here to do. It's why we're funded by the community, is order to do this. And so we have to make sure that we're evolving with it and renewing our dedication to that.
I think that idea of making something better isn't, sometimes it's because it's not working great and it needs to go forward. Sometimes it's pretty okay and people are pretty proud of themselves and you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings going forward. But I think the outside pressures and the outside exigencies of what's happening in today's world mean that even if you're kind of on an even keel in your town, that's not going to remain the case forever. And the better work we do today is going to serve us well tomorrow. And so that idea that it's always change, right? It's the only constant thing, as they say. How are we responding in that manner? And having that kind of willingness to do planning on a different cycle than we have in the past, to think perhaps in shorter cycles, or planning cycles in just certain areas of our work, not the entire organization every time we do planning. So finding new ways to do that planning and thinking about building for the future is what that fifth point is about, is incorporating and building upon existing paradigms. That there's tons of work going on out there that are many people envisioning what it looks like to build a stronger world, world and have more stability and safety in our world, you can build on those paradigms. You can use the triple bottom line as something that you use to measure decision making. You can use project outcome from PLA to do outcome-based evaluation. You could create your own dashboard related to the donut economics model, whatever you want. You don't have to make it up yourself. So if you're feeling overwhelmed about where do you start, where do we go, there's lots of stuff out there. Our certification program is just one example of that, but you can create your own model. Maybe it's a personal model. Maybe it's a team model. Maybe it's an organization-wide model. But whatever it is, you need to start accelerating that work, and using those existing paradigms can help you get there a lot faster.
And then finally, to continuously engage and involve the community. I talked about that before when we undertook using the Harwood material from Libraries Transform Communities. And even in this slide, just the fact is that you need to be out there talking, understanding, hands in the dirt, doing the stuff it takes, that you're outwardly showing how involved you are in making transformation and making and doing more good stuff in that community.
I think that community involvement, right? When the community feels ownership, it's their library too, that they understand they help to shape it, and it's part of what makes living in their town so great or going to their school so awesome. That ownership or buy-in that they have is one of those things that will create that cycle that you're looking for to bring new and energetic life back to them. That your library needs that energy and life also, not just the community. And if you're going to keep going and have the resources you need to be successful, it takes that I think cyclical buy-in from the community to really understand what's going on at the library, why you do what you do, and to invest in it for the future. So this is the model, that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, that something I've been looking at a lot in the past year and a half here, which is a project out of Santa Monica, California called the Well-Being Project. And this was funded with a $1 million grant from the Bloomberg Foundation, but it's been used to create a roadmap for an entire city to understand their guideposts for making policy decisions, and for agencies across that city to measure their impact on the well-being of the citizens of the city. And I do think this might translate well for libraries as well, which is why I put it forth to you today. I think you might be particularly interested in the measurement row, where we talk about the sample measures or the metrics that people could use to measure, are we moving in a positive way and making the world, as Matt said, more good by participating in these 5 categories? Are the library's services and programs speaking to increasing the measurement items that you see here? And my eye is drawn to that first column under community, the 4th one down, frequency of social contact. Because when COVID hit, one of the first things I thought when I kept hearing the phrase social distancing was I had an adverse reaction to it for many reasons, as I'm sure you did. But the first thing I started thinking about was how do libraries help make sure that social distancing doesn't mean social isolation? How do we measure the impact of being stuck in your house by yourself if you don't have family nearby, or for kids who are being isolated from their peers? How do we figure out the mental health of our community in the midst of this pandemic? That was a major role that libraries played right now that we are not talking about in a way that we're getting enough credit for. So when you start telling your story and start talking to legislators about how libraries participated in COVID and the response and recovery, don't leave out that very human element of the work that we do to connect humans with other humans, in addition to all these very important metrics that you see here.
So this is a lovely set of slides that shows what happens when you're not being regenerative. This is kind of the anti-example, where you're not engaging all the different stakeholders, and you have folks who are having trouble spelling even who you are, but still want you to fail. Staff's not engaged in anything, it seems, maybe not even getting enough nutrition to stay awake at the desk. I'm not quite sure what's happening there, but that young lady is done. The facilities are not in good shape, that you're not providing a healthy atmosphere for your workers or for those who are visiting. And then maybe some questionable choices or disposable products in the kind of the giveaways that we have, or the things that we use in our libraries. So that imbalance is in really all of this, is that when we think of the pen tab, we think of those different stakeholder groups, something is wrong in each of these pictures in that, whether it's that the investors, the taxpayers not seeing the value of what you're offering, there's not the respect of the earth, you're not respecting the co-creators and staff. All of that is what's kind of these kinds of examples. And Rebekkah, you can jump in here too, but I know that we spent some time trying to find examples of regeneration, and it was challenging because it's not language that's being used right now. This is it's not kind of a way that we're talking about ourselves. But I know we did find a few. It's just we did think that the absence here of them was also illustrative. But
let's be kind today. Well, let's be kind to ourselves, right? We'll call it room for improvement, right? We're all trying our best at our mission, and our core of our mission is truly exemplifying what we're talking about today. When you think about why we focus on information literacy, why we help people with research skills, why we're trying to help with digital inclusion efforts throughout our communities right now, all of that is exactly what we're talking about right now. But are our institutions run that way? Are we amplifying that work in a way that's truly going to pay off for our libraries? We think there's some work to do there.
So back, geez, I think it was when we were working on a paper for IFLA, we kind of realized that we had done things that other people had studied. And we didn't even read the study before we started to do things. So we found this article from MIT on change leadership. And the idea here is that that in order to get things done, you need to, that there is a way to make these changes, right? That there's the ability for us to manage through and help our organizations, help our communities through to another side. So the first thing is urgency. It has to make sense that it's important to your community, it's important to your institution, it's important to what you need to do. Then the leader has to take that and make it actionable. And then you're going to push out in the boundaries. And in a big way, I think what we're talking about today is the third one, is the idea of the boundaries being pushed. As I said before in that slide, is it's not trying to just stay even, but actually to do more good in the community by expanding what we're able to do with our institutions, our buildings, our program. And a place to start, as Rebekkah talked about before, is the Sustainable Libraries Initiative and the Sustainable Library Certification Program. So congratulations to my colleague here in Suffolk County, Mark, and his crew at North Babylon for being certified sustainable.
I think the accomplishment of the 4 libraries that you see who are currently certified, I'm sorry, I've got that slide too away from here, but the accomplishment that they've made to start figuring it out. And I encourage you to, any chance you get, talk to the libraries that are going through this program and find out what it's doing for their organizations, because it's doing something that's an enormous lift, a very heavy lift, which is to change the culture of an organization, to change a mindset. As our friend Victor Konsenko from San Pablo always says, you have to change mindset to do work in a new way. And that's part of the design of this program. And if that's something that might be helpful to your organization, we just wanted to let you know what areas were that get covered during that program to help you walk through it more holistically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is what you're going to see when you undertake them. It's really very comprehensive, and it really leads to a great understanding for those who are part of it, and hopefully those who initially are resistant to it. They might start to see those changes affect their workplace, and in a positive way, in a way that they're starting to see those benefits, and then hopefully come around and say, hey, you know, at first I was skeptical of this, but now I feel like this is really a good thing for where I work and a good thing for my community.
Cool. So these are your peers here in New York State that have become certified: Hendrick Hudson, Saratoga, Lindenhurst, and North Babylon. And we've got another one waiting in the wings, we understand, are just possibly hours away from being certified. But there's another 30 libraries coming up behind them, and libraries knocking on the door from outside of New York State and literally outside of the US who want to be a part of this program. So if you're looking for a guide by the side to do the work, this might be a way forward. If you think you can do it on your own and just want to learn more about it, this is still a great community of practice focus to join through New York's Library Association at the START Roundtable. We just wanted to flash in front of you just a couple of cool things that kind of emerged from the work we've been doing. We've got the Suffolk County Library System, their solar installations providing 75% of the energy used to run their facility. The Saratoga Library is being recognized as a leader in the community for addressing transportation issues and focusing on staff health and wellness. Lindenhurst has a community garden that's getting fresh fruits and vegetables into the hands of not only the public, but staff as well, and being that distribution point right at the circulation desk. South Huntington, just with a teeny bit of goal setting, all of a sudden reduced their energy consumption and their water consumption by significant percentage points in just 12 months. With just a little bit of thought and a couple of different behavior changes, you can make a big, big difference. Patchogue Medford, one of the latest libraries to finish the environmental portion of the program, they were really challenged by the fact there was no recycling, either municipal or commercial, in their village. So the staff figured out a new way around it. They didn't let corporate or government policymaking keep them from doing what they knew had to be done right. And our own organization here at the Mid-Hudson Library System, making a board level policy and governance decision to invest the public dollars that we are entrusted with back into local businesses. That sends a big message to taxpayers. So again, each little choice adds up to tell that story of who your library is going to be. And we hope today has hopefully been empowering for you, if not giving you some stuff to think about. As you can tell, Matt and I think a lot about this stuff. We love connecting with people in the New York library community and hearing what you're up to and what you're doing and what your thoughts are for the future. We think it really enriches life here in the New York library community. So Becky, we're going to pause here and see if any questions came through you'd like us to address.
Yeah, so again, if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand. And while we're waiting for those, I just want to give a shout out to Jill Hurst-Wall, who has been the link fairy for not just this session, but other sessions. She's on it, popping in links that anybody mentions. So thank you, Jill, for doing that.
Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
I didn't know that was a thing, a link fairy.
It is now. I coined the phrase, I think. Lots of thank you so much for this great information. Yes, Jill, it is your new title. I expect to see it in your email signature. I also want to point out, if you're looking to learn more about the library garden at Lindenhurst, South Huntington, and in Nassau Library System, and one in the Bronx, there's a great program in the on-demand for libraries, for gardens, great programs that you can check out. Okay, we have a question in the chat. How do we encourage people to change their mindset? How do we teach the broader culture that a transformation toward regeneration in every aspect of our lives is necessary and indeed vital?
It's a big lift, right? You're not going to do it just by telling someone to their face they need to do it. They need to experience and learn and come along with you. When you think about your own learning of how you've understood more about these topics and how they intersect with your work in libraries, it's been a journey, right? Like, you go to conferences, you read things, you look for examples, you start to envision the world you want to live in. And we have to start manifesting those experiences for more people in our organization so they come to the same level of understanding that others like yourself have. So that's you might have noticed when we showed the slide of the categories that are part of the certification program. I'll go back here. Very first one is organizational commitment. It's really, building board understanding and acceptance and then baking it into policy and planning. It's doing the same thing with staff to help them have an educational experience to understand why we need to do this work, what it might look like, inviting them to contribute to it. That experience we had, and Matt, I think you've had that experience too in your organization, but here at Mid-Hudson, when we gave the staff the opportunity to be a part of learning together and to contribute to what our future would look like as an organization, the buy-in just fell right in line. And it's very fun to watch in my organization. The unexpected people on our staff who rose up, joined the team, are a big part of making decisions now, and have really influenced not only the triple bottom line, but the bottom line for our organization by making better decisions.
We just had a question. What about outside of the library world?
What about it? It's a pretty big place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think my answer to that would be that that's part of the group you have to be mindful of and be partnered with when you are doing your work. And I think that, to me, I'm a big believer in understanding the true mission of the library, which is to improve everything that's related to it. And so my job is to improve the Hauppauge. And that's more than just the people, right? It's also it should be the earth and the sky and everything about it. So by example, by my mindset being that that's my responsibility, hopefully I'm pulling in those people from outside. So because I'm being paid, my library's getting tax funding to make sure that Hauppauge improves, not just the guests that come through the door, not just the trustees that run the library, not just the staff. It's all of us, and it's everyone that, yes, it's an artificial border, Rebekkah, thank you for pointing it out, but that I'm responsible for. So
I wonder if that question, Becky, and I'm sorry if I misunderstood, was by that same person who asked about how you change mindset and how you do that outside of the library. Is that where we were going?
It was not, but
okay.
Oh, wait. Let me see. Oh, it was by the same person. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that
Daniel
makes more
Butler.
sense. That makes a lot more sense to me now, because I think that when we look outside of our library boundaries, we see some scary stuff. We see people denying climate change. We see people who are very polarized in their political beliefs. We see people that shame you if you aren't going hard enough on an issue. It's a dangerous place out there, right? And we have to protect the reputation of our library, but we have to take calculated risks as well to find like-minded people who are reasonable and civil and want to work with others, regardless of perhaps political affiliation, which is very hard to believe this week. But I do believe we can figure out a way forward. I was just sharing with Matt my next article for Library Journal and some of the research I was doing about decentralized leadership and how it looks to work with like-minded people without one person in charge and leading the way and telling us how it's going to be, that we respect the wisdom of others and respect the diversity of our communities in new ways and provide safer places for people to have conversations. It's certainly work. And that's why I think it has to be part of a strategic decision a library makes to participate in that way.
You mean co-creators?
Maybe.
Huh.
We're just about at time, but we have one question, and I think lots of people would be interested in this, so I'm going to ask it. It's from Amanda Travis. Rebekkah, can you talk more about what the Mid-Hudson Library System is doing around buying local?
Sure. We have a wonderful person on our staff, Joan Kay, shout out to Joan, who is basically a purchasing officer in addition to a number of other things that she does. But when she does research for products that we need to buy in-house, we're not only looking at our general accounts like with WB Mason, but we're also looking for local businesses that may provide similar services at the same cost. Why wouldn't you give your money to a local business over someone who maybe has made billing a little easier, but is not necessarily benefiting your local taxpayers? So the good example that I showed there before is when we, back in the before times, when we used to invite people to our auditorium for events, where do the refreshments come from for those events? We made sure it came from a locally owned business. It didn't cost us any more. And the business was a really good partner to us. And they were so thrilled that we picked them. They actually threw in delivery for free, making our staff's lives easier. So I think new and energetic life came from that decision that we make to invest in our local community, and they invested back in us. That's just one example. But I think anytime you look down the warrant list and you see all the money you spend, because libraries spend over $1.2 billion a year in New York, where are we putting that money? Are we putting it in the hands of people who have similar values to us, who are our neighbors? Can we make better choices? Do we sometimes have to pay a premium for that to live our values? Those are questions that boards and staff should be having.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. So wonderful. So many comments in the comment section. Wonderful. Well done. Someone said, I need this inspiration at least once a year. So thank you so much. And again, everyone, it has been recorded. It will be shared after we transcribe it and get it posted and everything. You have about a half an hour until your next session. So thank you again, Matt and Rebekkah, and thank you everyone for attending.
Becky, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Becky.
You're welcome. Bye.